In a way, it followed me.
It has a habit of doing that. I've tried over and over through the years to give up UFO research. I do it for a few years, and then somehow it drags me back in 2006. I was dragged in, not kicking and screaming, and that's where the Paracast started. Anyway, okay, so let's go back to the teenage UFO years in reality, and we'll look at the novel later on. But back in the 60s, back in the 70s, young people were attracted to things like UFOs. Why? Was it something that was wrong with us? Why were we attracted? You and I and Alan Greenfield, Jerome Clark, Tim Beckley, all these people being interested in the possibility that we're being visited by E.T.
I can't speak for you. I can only speak for myself, and I will tell you exactly how I got drawn into it. In the fall of 1960, when I was 12 going on 13, I read a book, and this was Gray Barker's They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers. I remember being seized by the conviction that this was the truth, that flying saucers had to be real, because otherwise, why were three men in black going around silencing people about it? I know this because I've reread a column I wrote for my school newspaper on flying saucers. I didn't yet call them UFOs. That initially I didn't believe they were from other planets. So that the subject fascinated me, not because I thought they were extraterrestrial, but for some other reason. And I think I can guess at that reason. Now, I will tell you this, knowing that probably anybody who reads my novel can guess that this part is autobiographical. That in our household, which was a family consisting of me, my father, and my mother, we had a terrible secret that none of us dared to speak with each other about. And that was that my mother was not merely a semi-invalid, as we called her, but that she was slowly dying of an incurable heart disease. So when I read Gray Barker's stories about the terrible secret that three men in black visit you if you even come even close to it and force you not to talk about it, this seemed to me a true and faithful mirror of reality as I knew it, and the reality that nobody else would talk about. So for that reason, I became convinced this was real.
In retrospect, I think more and more people realize that Gray Barker was a very good storyteller. He'd take the truth and sometimes add a little bit more than the truth to his stories, to his books, to his magazine articles, more so as he got older. Did you come to that realization, too, at any point in time?
Oh, I think so. But I think there's something else true, that Gray Barker had his own secret. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. We had a story here. As a matter of fact, we had an episode. We featured the movie Shades of Grey, this biography of Gray Barker about his life. And yes, we had Jim Mosley on. We had people who knew Gray Barker in addition to Jim, so certainly there are no secrets here.
Yes, and the secret no longer seems quite as terrible as it would have in the 1950s. And the secret, for those of your listeners who are not familiar with it, is that Gray Barker was gay. And let's hope that we're moving into an era in which no one can even understand why that should be kept secret at all. But certainly in the context of West Virginia around the middle of the last century, Gray Barker was carrying a terrific, terrible, unrevealable secret. And I think that whatever his distortions, whatever his fabrications, whatever his, let's give it the finest term we can, myth-making, was in that book. It's informed by his own terrible secret, and that gives it the feel of authenticity.
So in a sense, knowing he had to keep a terrible secret, he could extrapolate and see how other people were keeping their own terrible secrets. Again, assuming that the secret at one time was considered terrible. Of course, it's not today.
Yeah, or he could, let's just put it a little bit differently from the way you did, that he could infuse whatever may have happened to Albert Bender and perhaps the other people he writes about with an authentic feeling of terror and the need to keep something secret. And I think it was this authentic feeling that spoke to me when I read his book and convinced me, yes, this is the truth. The people who say these things are not real, they are the liars.
With regard to UFOs, I think a lot of people came to that realization for different reasons. But do you believe there really are or were men in black?
Oh boy, I am hesitating here because the answer is no and yes and no.
Well.
Okay, I think Bender was probably visited by somebody. I don't know who or why. I've read Mike Swords' theory that government red hunters, this was the McCarthy era, of course, 1953, that government red hunters picked up on the name of Bender's organization, the International Flying Saucer Bureau. The word international rang alarm bells. They thought it was a Communist Front organization and stopped by to find out. That, to me, is the most plausible theory.
And we'll go into more theories in a moment. We have David Halperin. His new book is called Journal of a UFO Investigator. It's a novel about the teen UFO years. I'm going to ask him if I'm in the book, because I'll tell you why in a moment. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the
Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You can download a version that is mostly full-featured. Try it out, and if you like it, it's just $34.95 for Graphic Converter from lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKESOFT.com. lemkesoft.com for my favorite Graphic Converter.
Making the right decisions is a challenge to investors. Are we going to see economic growth, slide into a recession, or at worst, depression? Hi, Ted Anderson from Midas Resources. We all know when a company acts irresponsibly, divesting ourselves in a move towards safety is prudent. When the market becomes volatile, U.S. Treasuries are a safe haven. But what do you do when the U.S. government overextends itself and spends beyond its means? Many investors are turning toward gold as a common-sense alternative to traditional paper investments. Midas Resources has put together a powerful book titled 10 Reasons to Own Gold, discussing costs, benefits, risks, featuring full-color illustrations, weights, and measures. The book is free and can be yours by calling 800-686-2237. Paper investments are dwarfed by gold's 6,000-year history. Discover how gold may be right for you and your IRA by calling 800-686-2237. Whether buying or it's time for you to sell, the book is free. Call 800-686-2237.
Skip the long lines and high prices at the florist, because right now at proflowers.com, you can get 24 assorted roses with a free glass vase and a free box of chocolates for just $29.99. Just visit proflowers.com. Look for the radio microphone in the upper right corner and enter the secret code 4444. Unlike overpriced flowers at the florist, which sit in the cooler for days, our flowers are sent fresh cut from the fields and are guaranteed to stay fresh and beautiful for at least 7 full days. Just visit proflowers.com today to get 24 assorted roses with a free glass vase and free chocolates for only $29.99. Order now and pick the delivery date you want. It's guaranteed. But hurry, because Valentine's Day is this Monday, and our special offer ends this Friday. The only way to get this amazing deal is to visit proflowers.com. Look for the radio microphone in the upper right corner and enter the secret code 4444.
This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill.
Gun sales are on a staggering pace. Gun prices are going through the roof, and that means desperate, vicious criminals now want your guns and will do anything to get them. Now, a new book reveals powerful secrets for hiding your guns from thieves and looters. You'll learn step-by-step, battle-hardened techniques, where to hide your guns so criminals will never find them, how to create the perfect hiding place, as well as the places you should never hide your guns, under any circumstance. These and other closely guarded gun caching secrets are guaranteed to keep your weapons safe and out of sight when the going gets tough. But listen up. For security reasons, the Hide Your Guns book and even the website may disappear without warning at any time. Go to hideyourguns.com. That's hideyourguns.com. Or call 877-327-0365 before they come for your guns. Hideyourguns.com right now. Right now.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com. Get in on all the action at forum.theparacast.com.
Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. We return with Dave Halperin, my old friend from Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact, who has been studying UFOs on and off for many, many decades. He's author of a new book called Journal of a UFO Investigator, a novel based on the teen UFO years. And we're talking about his belief systems, and about, right now, the Men in Black. And we started with Gray Barker and the book They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, which was his bestseller that made him famous. And probably he lived on that fame, more or less, for pretty much the rest of his life. Although he was not wealthy by any means, but that's another story, as contained in the documentary Shades of Grey. Anyway, okay, so you think that maybe not 3 men in black, but government agents came to Albert Bender and just were curious as to what he was doing, that he didn't just make it all up.
That's my guess. Do I believe in the 3 men in black? How about if we transfer that from belief in them as flesh and blood human beings or entities in this tangible world to some sort of psychological pattern that tends to emerge in different times?
Okay, now you're raising some interesting possibilities here. Okay, so we're moving in one area, physical men in black or government agents dressed in dark or black suits, and now you're talking about something psychological. In what sense?
Probably Jungian archetypes. Okay, let me tell you where I'm going with this.
Sure.
That one of the people I've been working with, that I've been studying over the past 10 years or so, was a Jewish mystic, a Kabbalist from the 17th century named Abraham Miguel Cardozo. And one night in 1683, Cardozo has a vision. He sees 4 people on the moon, 3 men and a woman, and he thinks he knows who the 3 men are. The 3 men come down from the moon, straight into his garden, and afterwards into his bedroom, it seems. And there they discuss Kabbalah, they discuss theology with him, and it becomes clear that they're not the people he thought they were. Instead, they're demons who have been sent to seduce him into heresy. They challenge him to have his God send fire upon them to burn them up, which he can't do, and instead their demon god sends fire upon Cardozo in the form of a burning fever. And he speaks at one point that these 3 black-clad beings stood by my bed.
I'm curious, one question here very quickly.
Sure.
They came down from the moon. Were they in a craft of some sort, or were they just basically levitate?
He doesn't tell us. And I'm quite sure he had no idea that the moon was, 240,000, 280,000 miles away. My guess is he thought it was just beyond the next fence. But no, he doesn't say a word about a craft.
So do you get this sense here that he was writing of something real or something that he dreamt?
Let's say a hallucination.
Okay.
I don't think he saw these as physical beings. But I think when he saw them, he was experiencing something he'd seen in paintings from his and sculpture from his childhood. And I need to say that Cardozo, although he was Jewish, was brought up as a Catholic in Spain. In Spain, there were myriads of paintings, of sculptures, of the Virgin Mary standing on the moon, often accompanied by 3 male cherubic heads. And I think that a memory of what he'd seen as a child erupted from his unconscious.
So we have this image of 3 men that goes through our religions too.
Yeah. And that, I think, is what an archetype is about. It's something that's part of us, that seems to transcend us as individuals. In that sense, it's outside of us. In that sense, it's something real. And in that sense, I can say, yes, I believe in the 3 men in black, but as visitors from inner space, not from outer, and not most basically from the government, even though, I mean, Bender's visitors may have been from the government, but and presumably they were real flesh and blood human beings, but that they get their power, the story gets its power from their fitting in with this archetype that Cardozo also experienced more than 300 years ago.
So do you think that maybe Bender's experience was partly physical and partly psychological, that he framed it in this way because of the archetype and the unconscious feelings?
Here we have to guess. I think it's a possibility.
Well, you know, of course, Bender wrote this book, Flying Saucers and the 3 Men, where he claimed that the 3 men in black were really alien visitors from the planet Kayak. And also he reported, you know, receiving some sort of sexually related treatment as part of this. And having heard Bender lecture about this, it's not something that Gray Barker, who published the book, just added to the tale. Maybe Barker wrote it, rewrote it extensively, did a lot of editing, but the core story was Bender's.
Yeah. And I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I certainly don't believe that it happened in what I guess Jerry Clark and others would call consensus reality.
Okay.
And yet I think it may have some significance to understanding the meaning of the 3 men in black.
Well, it's very interesting, too, that we haven't heard so much lately of 3 men in black. I mean, certainly if you read the books of John Keel, he had all sorts of stories about that. He encountered evidence of people making fake phone calls, things like that, evidence of people encountering them. But lately we don't hear it. Do you?
Yeah, I have not.
Okay. Now, we did a show on the Men in Black recently with Tim Beckley and Alan Greenfield, and both went into areas where, as a matter of fact, they did encounter supposed people who may have been men in black. And some of those things are kind of controversial. And those who haven't heard the episode, I'll just ask you, neighbors, you know, listen to the episode that we did on the Men in Black and make your own decisions, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe you feel that Alan Greenfield, for example, believed a little too much when he saw this person go around the corner and suddenly he's gone, or about the person seen outside the home of the late Jack and Mary Robinson in Jersey City, New Jersey. You know, who was that person? That's a good question. That's a very good question. We have Dave Halperin. He is author of a book called Journal of a UFO Investigator, a novel about the teen UFO years. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it.
Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-877-804-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. So, disable the cable and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV right now to sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and up to 4 rooms. And there's no equipment to buy. That includes your free HD TV upgrade, your free DVR upgrade, and your free professional installation. And the best part, the pristine digital picture and sound. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. So, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV. Disable the cable, cut costs, and get more. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV.
If you owe money to the IRS, you can't make the problem go away by yourself. But with the help of Dan Pilla, you can get your problem solved once and for all.
Hi, I'm Dan Pilla. For 30 years, I've helped thousands of people solve their tax debt problem, and I can help you solve yours too. We take a very simple but proven 3-step approach to solving your problem. First, we stabilize IRS collection actions so you don't have to worry about the IRS seizing your bank account or paycheck. Next, we build a comprehensive plan to get your tax debt reduced to the fullest extent possible, sometimes even completely eliminated. And finally, we work with you every step of the way to get your problem solved once and for all. Call us for a free consultation. Call 1-800-346-6829. We'll work together to get your problem solved, guaranteed.
Dan Pilla has been protecting taxpayers from the IRS for 3 decades, and he can help you too. Call us today at 800-346-6829. That's 800-34-NO-TAX.
Where have all the military surplus stores gone? Don't worry, you don't need one, because everything you need at Military Surplus is at MaineMilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E Military.com, one of the last surviving true military surplus stores in the country. Go online now to MaineMilitary.com and discover a source for hard-to-find surplus items at true surplus prices. Surplus gun cleaning kits as low as $2.99. Complete chemical suits as low as $11.99. See our huge selection of gas masks, filters, and accessories. Finish and M10 gas masks are 3 for $30, and Swiss filters are 3 for $12. Searching for Strike Anywhere matches? MaineMilitary.com has them, plus a whole new product line of survival and first aid kits and lots more. Get free shipping on orders over $50 only at MaineMilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E Military.com, or call 877-608-0179, 877-608-0179. MaineMilitary.com, the main name in military supply.
This special announcement is brought to you by Renaissance Charge. Have you ever wondered if you could make your car run on 100% electric power for free? It is now possible. How about a simple device that is both a super efficient motor and a free energy generator at the same time? What if this could also be used to restore useless batteries and save you lots of money? Because our customers asked for it, we have organized a Renaissance Charge Conference Workshop on July 29th to July 31st at the beautiful Coeur d'Alene Resort in Idaho. Not only will you see these fascinating energizers, but you will be able to build some alongside genius inventor John Bedini. Participate in this truly historic event featuring our cutting-edge alternative energy Tesla technology. Register early for the best seats and advanced workshop by visiting rcharge.com. That's r-charge.com for details. Or call 208-772-4514. That's 208-772-4514.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
You're in the Paracast with Gene Steinberg and Chris O'Brien, who is now our permanent co-host. For those wondering, he gets his gold watch next week. No, he doesn't. He gets his gold watch after 72 episodes. And then he gives it back to me because we can only loan it to him. We can't afford to actually buy one. I think it's going to be 1/2 carat gold. I'm sorry about that, Chris. Our guest this week, my old dear friend, Dave Halperin. We've rediscovered him after all these years. I'm really happy to enjoy what he has to say, his extensive knowledge about ancient studies and UFOs. He's author of a book called Journal of a UFO Investigator. Now, we were talking about physical and maybe not so physical men in black, but back to Albert K. Bender, the book, Flying Saucers and the Three Men. So I want to basically leave this after this particular reference. David, do you think that he actually had a physical encounter with aliens, or is that part of the science fiction or part of his imagination in terms of believing he had an experience that didn't happen?
Okay, well, I can tell you, I'm completely convinced he did not have an encounter physically with aliens. Now, where his story comes from and what significance we're to give to it in making sense of Bender himself, I don't know. It is really striking to me, Gene, that I think you're referring to that episode where he's taken aboard a UFO and there's 3 women wearing tight uniforms and they massage every part of his body without exception.
Oh, yes. I remember when Jim Mosley reviewed that book in Saucer News. And he was going wild over that segment, as you might expect.
And it's only one incidental throwaway remark. And we only can infer what went on from that without exception. And I can't remember whether Bender italicizes that or not. And yet, I think probably Mosley's instinct was correct. That experience with the 3 women, or the imagined experience, as I would think, was something pivotal to Bender's story.
So you think that sexual innuendo there, that has something to do with the original report of being visited by 3 men?
That I don't know. And I don't know how these things fit together. But it does strike me that unobtrusive remark of Bender's seems to be so well remembered. And I really believe that how people receive what you say, how people report what you say, may point to the inner meaning of what you've said. Am I coming across here?
Oh, yeah. I think I understand perfectly what you're saying, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's look at some of the definitions here. We seem to see that these beings, whoever they are, seem to come in groups of 3. Is there some symbolism about that?
Well, what strikes me, and the reason why I raise that with you, is that as far as I know, Bender's the only one who experiences them as 3. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't recall another case of the number 3 actually occurring in the lore. And yet we remember them as 3, which leads me to think there is something archetypal about that number, something connected with Cardozo's 3 men in black from the moon. And the model that I would use to interpret it would be the Jungian archetype of the quaternity, that there is something embedded in our, I'm going to go so far as to say collective psyche, though I know I'm getting onto extremely thin ice here, something embedded in our collective psyche that sees a significance in the number 4, of which the 4th member is different from the other 3. And where you've got a threesome, it may be a quaternity that's been in some way mutilated and abridged. Now, if you ask me who is the 4th to Bender's 3 men in black, I've got to admit I don't know. But I think the persistence of that number suggests that there's something about it that our psyches respond to.
That makes sense to me. You don't have to worry about talking about Jung around me. I'm a real an aficionado. In fact, I got a copy of the Red Book. I don't know if you've heard about this, but all his journals from 1916 to 1932 were released by the family in this huge 2-foot-tall book.
Yes.
And Jung, I think for mainstream nuts and bolts ufology does not get a fair shake. I think there is something to the collective unconscious. I don't care what Jerry Clark says. I don't care what Stanton Friedman says. they're missing the boat as far as I'm concerned. There's tremendous importance in examining the collective human unconscious as it relates to paranormal subjects and especially ufology. So I applaud you on that analogy.
But now I have to ask you a question, Chris. Did Jerry deny the relevance of Jung, or simply deny that this was the core of the mystery?
Well, it's funny. In one breath, he was saying that there's no such thing as a collective unconscious, that he didn't believe in that. And then he went on to describe a scenario where something akin to an out-of-the-box theory has all of us sort of manifesting this together, which sounds like he was denying it and agreeing with it in the same, practically the same breath. So, no, he was really down on Vallée and Jung and just the whole idea of collectively manifesting phenomena, which I think is going on personally.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am. I'm drawn to Jung, despite that I find his mystagogic style of writing very off-putting.
Yeah.
In my research, I just keep running into data that I need Jung to correlate and explain, like the 3 men from the moon accompanied by a woman that I talked with Gene about earlier, whom the Jewish mystic Abraham Cardozo sees in 1683. I think I have my differences with Jerry, but I'm not sure from my own perspective, that they're quite that sharp. It's just, to me, it's just a question of emphasis, that he sees the essential issue as being the event anomaly, which I guess I don't know that I'm qualified to talk about, although I tend to be skeptical about it, whereas I see the essence as being in the experience anomaly and what inside us that may be coming from.
Well, I really do feel that we have to be looking at these things from an out-of-the-box perspective. Yeah. And I think Jung, although I don't agree with everything that he postulates, and I do have a problem with some of his languaging, as you do, I do really have a sense that there is a collective manifestation of phenomenon going on. And the human mind tends to revert to archetypal primal symbols and when it's faced with the unknown. And I found that I've interviewed thousands of witnesses as a field investigator over the years, and I've noticed this tendency for people to get very basic when they describe their emotional state after an experience, when they describe the details of something that is, in their mind, fear-based especially. And you see it in the New Age as well. There seems to be a knee-jerk reaction to this stuff to go to very positive archetypal symbols, and this is something again that I don't really feel gets enough attention in this field, and I thank you for for bringing this up. This is an important issue for me.
We'll get into more of this in a moment. We have David Halperin, author of a novel, Journal of a UFO Investigator, longtime researcher into UFOs, especially involving ancient studies and so forth and so on. We'll get into that in a moment. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You're in
the Paracast.
Hey neighbors, Mac security threats come in many forms. Trojan horses and other types of malware try to infect your Mac. Booby-trapped websites try to steal your personal information, and hackers try to get into your Mac over a network. Intego Virus Barrier X6 is much more than just an antivirus program. Virus Barrier X6 protects against all these threats and more. Visit Intego.com. That's INTEGO.com.
Have you been sitting on a few great domain name ideas but haven't locked them in for yourself? Good. Now you can buy them through the #1 domain name registrar, Namecheap.com, as voted by the top tech blog Lifehacker. Just like the name says, you can buy domains cheap, as low as $2.99, and every new domain comes with WhoisGuard, our special privacy service, free for the first year. Now that you know, it's time to grab those domain names before someone else does. Namecheap.com. Go now. Namecheap.com.
Becoming a modern smoker is now easier and more cost-effective, thanks to LeSig. Traditional smokers the world over love LeSig. E-cigarettes with a look, feel, and taste of real cigarettes, but without the nasty smoke, ashes, or stains. LeSig is powered by revolutionary microelectronic technology. A small rechargeable battery and unique replaceable cartridge provide all the satisfaction and benefits of smoking without the smoke and all the hazards. See the large variety of LeSig e-cigarette supplies and accessories at LeSig.com. That's LECIG.com. LeSig is competitively priced, comes with the best customer service, a 30-day warranty, and satisfaction guaranteed. What a great gift idea. For a 10% discount, mention GCN when you call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Ask for fast, free same-day shipping. Order online at LeSig.com and use promo code GCN at checkout. That's LECIG.com. LeSig, for today's modern smoker.
Hi, I'm Mark Craighead, founder of Crossbreed Holsters. I designed our top-selling holster, the Super Tuck Deluxe, to solve the problems of being poked, pinched, and gouged while carrying concealed. The Super Tuck Deluxe is the most comfortable, most concealable holster on the market today. We offer a 2-week free trial and a lifetime warranty.
Visit us at crossbreedholsters.com. Don't forget, crossbreedholsters.com.
If you're serious about playing college football, give yourself the competitive edge with the National Underclassmen Football Combine. The NUC is the longest-running underclassmen event and the most respected combine and football camp in the nation, specifically designed to give athletes early recruiting exposure. There's no better time than now to compete in the National Underclassmen Football Combine. Call 888-NUC-MVP1 or go to nationalunderclassmen.com to find out more.
Do you owe the IRS money you can't pay? Then listen carefully, because you already know that the problem won't go away by itself. You can get help today from the leading tax expert in the country, Dan Pilla.
Hi, I'm Dan Pilla. The IRS isn't going to just forget about you. Right now, the IRS is hiring thousands of tax collectors to go after delinquent accounts just like yours. That's why you need to take action today, and I can help. I take a simple but proven approach to solving your tax debt problem. First, I stabilize collections so you don't have to worry about wage and bank levies. Next, I build a detailed plan to get your debt reduced to the fullest extent possible, sometimes even eliminated. Finally, I work with you every step of the way to get your problem solved once and for all. So call now for a free consultation. Call 1-800-346-6829.
Dan Pilla will solve your tax problem, guaranteed. He's helped thousands of people, and he can help you too. Call us today at 800-346-6829. That's 800-34-NO-TAX.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
You've entered another dimension. You've entered the Paracast.
We return with David Halperin. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You're in the Paracast. We're exploring now all sorts of images and beliefs about UFOs, about ancient studies, how they may relate to modern studies. Do you think if we have physical UFOs, David, that they were here when Ezekiel saw the wheels as depicted in the Bible?
No. I mean, and here I would totally agree with Jerry that what we've got in Ezekiel's vision is, I guess we call, I'm not even sure I would call it an experience anomaly, because I've spent much of my life studying that vision and the spin-offs of that vision in Jewish tradition And I've got to tell you, I still don't understand it. I don't see it as a machine. I don't see it as anything extraterrestrial. I think I know the direction on which I try to understand Ezekiel's wheels. But when I try to explain the details of the vision verse by verse, I find myself baffled.
Interesting. What about it doesn't work for you?
Well, take the wheels themselves. What are these wheels? I mean, the song the spiritual that's based on the chapter, Ezekiel saw the wheels way up in the middle of the air, sounds much more UFO-like than the vision than Ezekiel's description itself. What Ezekiel describes, and I'm taking just a moment to open my Bible to that chapter. He says that as I beheld the living creatures, behold one wheel. My translation says at the bottom, but the Hebrew says on the earth, hard by the living creatures, at the four faces thereof. Now, what does that mean? What is a wheel on the earth? Why is it on the earth? Then in that was verse 15. Now in the very next verse, the appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of a beryl, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work were as it were a wheel within a wheel. How did we get from one wheel to four? Do you see the sort of problems that keep bugging me?
Well, it's almost like a riddle.
Yeah. And while we're talking, I have in front of me an illustration from the frontispiece of a book published in 1935, Studies in the Book of Ezekiel, that shows a silver coin from Gaza in the latter part of the 5th century BCE, which would be about 150 years after Ezekiel. It shows a bearded human figure sitting on what seems to be a chariot, which has both a very prominent wheel with four spokes and a very prominent wing between the wheel and the human-like figure. And right around the face of this bearded figure are the three letters in Hebrew, Yod, He, Vav, which seem to indicate the Jewish God, Yahweh. So this looks like a picture of Ezekiel's God riding a chariot with a wing, and the wings are all over the place in the first chapter of Ezekiel, and a very prominent wheel. So I think those are the lines along which we're to look for an interpretation of what Ezekiel reports in this chapter. I don't think in terms of modern technology, extraterrestrial at all. But if I take that picture and apply it to the chapter, the chapter says so much more and so confusingly that I don't know just how to make the connection.
In the long and short of it, David Halpern, are we saying then that people like Eric Von Daniken and even our old friend Yonah Fortner from the days of Saucer News, when they talked about spaceships visiting in ancient times, none of that is physically true?
Yeah, I would say that. I would absolutely say that. Now, that doesn't mean, if we're going back to our friend Jung, that doesn't mean that Ezekiel's vision was not of UFOs.
That's an interesting paradox.
Right.
What was the name of the book that was written by the NASA scientist, I think in the 80s? I have a copy of it in boxes somewhere. But it was an examination of the Ezekiel description, which he was able to then kind of create this strange-looking contraption that is on the cover of the book. Do you remember that book, Gene?
Offhand, no.
It was a NASA scientist who wrote a little book about Ezekiel's, about the actual physical device that he felt was being described. I'll have to do a little research on that while we're doing this, and I'll mention it for our listeners. It's a pretty interesting book, but again, it flies in the face of what David's saying here. So let's continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll go find the title of this book while we're talking.
I think the author is Josef Blumrich, yeah?
I'm not sure. He was an American NASA scientist, if I remember correctly. I'll look it up.
Okay, so we'll hear the sound now of Chris O'Brien searching Google or his vast library, which he can't do because he's not at his home office now. He's in California. He's watching the bikini-clad babes.
Oh, yeah.
Through his picture window.
Oh, yeah. I'm right on the beach.
That's right. He's talking to us from the beach, folks. Okay? You know, so we always wondered about that, whether this guy is involved in the beach, but now we know that he wants to be a beach bum, which you can't do in Arizona. Okay, so let's go back to what we're talking about here, David. Okay, so if the ancient events that we see in the Bible and elsewhere, if they're not physical UFO visitations, you know, rather than going into various causes that we've already started covering, when do you think the UFO mystery as a physical phenomenon, if it is a physical phenomenon, began?
Okay, and there, I think I would start us with 1947, when it becomes, and I'm not sure if I would say as a physical phenomenon, but as a cultural phenomenon. I mean, people have seen odd things in the skies going way, way back. There's no question about that. But it seems to be with the Kenneth Arnold sighting that it becomes an identifiable enigma, that you point that there's a certain class of mysterious things that are called first flying saucers and then UFOs. Whether there is anything physical present, I do not know. I'm inclined to doubt it, but I've got to say that Jerry Clark is far more qualified to speak to that end than to speak to that aspect of it than I am. But I would just have to say, for myself, I am disinclined to think there is anything physical out of the ordinary.
Okay,
Maybe
would you look into things
phenomena.
like ultra-terrestrials, like what John Keel was talking about? Is that referring to something that is physical or not so physical?
How does Keel use the term ultra-terrestrials?
That they're demons. They're here to mess with our heads.
Yeah, and I believe in demons as a psychological phenomenon. I think when we talk about our inner demons, it's a very meaningful way to speak of the things that torment us. And I have no doubt that people like the one I keep coming back to, Abraham Cardozo, will experience those demons objectified outside themselves. But I certainly don't think they exist the way rabbits and dogs and cats do, and the way the planet Venus or the moon or the clouds or the meteors do.
Well, of course, the question will be asked by our listeners, and the one I'll ask, and we'll probably have to pursue that question in the next segment, and that is, okay, if they can be photographed, if they can be tracked on radar, if they evidently leave physical traces in the ground, how can we say UFOs aren't physical, or at least some aren't physical? And David, you'll hold that answer, and we'll let you respond as soon as we do the station break. We have David Halperin. He has studied the UFO enigma for many, many years from various points of view. He's also the author of this new novel called Journal of a UFO Investigator about the teen UFO years. And we'll revisit that a little bit later in the show. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. We, the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Ted Anderson, I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We return. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. David Halpern is our guest. So the question on the table is, if UFOs are not quite physical, how do you explain the physical evidence that's out there?
Can you give me some specific examples of the physical evidence?
Okay, let's look at radar visual sightings. You see something strange in the sky, you track it on radar. Is that real or Memorex or what?
I don't know. Now, I am going to admit here a great weakness of my approach. And that is, do you remember Lex Mebane from the old days of ufology?
Okay, Lex Mebane was one of the executives of an organization called CSI of New York. This is before we had the CSI show about crime scene investigators. It was one of the more scientific UFO investigative organizations. They had a body of great information. This goes back to the 50s and 60s. The organization was around.
Yeah. Now, I remember when I was a kid, a teen ufologist, reading an article of his in which he wrote very trenchantly. He said, of course, skeptics don't read sighting reports. 9 out of 10 insist on arguing in generalizations and couldn't tell a good sighting from a poor one if their lives depended on it. And I remember thinking, this guy is absolutely on target, and this is what we have to cope with. Skeptics who are ignorant of the data and don't want to be familiar with it. Now, I am in the position of exactly those people whom Mebane criticized and whom I resented so badly. I am persuaded on, let's say, a priori grounds that the UFOs are wildly unlikely, that they're extraterrestrial vehicles. Having being at that belief, holding that belief, I do not spend time studying the reports that might convince me otherwise, but rather dismiss them by saying there must be some explanation. I don't know what it is in each case, and perhaps in many cases I would never, no matter how I studied it, know what it is, know what that explanation is, but there must be an explanation. You remember, Gene, that case, that landing with physical traces that you and I crossed swords about?
Tell our listeners about this, because this is interesting, of course. Now, understand, David and I were very good friends as teenagers, but we had sort of a falling out, publicly, as a matter of fact, over a single case in New Jersey. Tell them about the case and about what you discovered.
Okay, what the case was, it was at Glassboro, New Jersey, in the fall of 65. Glassboro later became famous, I think in 68, when Lyndon Johnson and I think Kosygin had a summit there. But in 65, it was simply a sleepy town in South Jersey until a UFO landed there and left, I think, a central hole, 3 smaller holes that were pushed into the ground, not dug, as was determined by some investigators, I'm not sure how, by a tripod that had rested there. A branch of a tree had been broken by the UFO that landed. And I remember, Gene, you and I debated that case in public, and you had the temerity to say that it was a hoax. And I defended strongly its authenticity, even though the young man who had dug the holes set off the cherry bomb and told the boys who later made the report that he had seen something land, even though he had confessed.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I was sure that his confession was like, well, all sorts of people confess to murders just to get in the newspapers. Now, in retrospect, I can see that was absolute nonsense.
So this is a public apology.
Not exactly an apology, an admission that I was wrong and you were right.
Well, I like to be right sometimes, but I respect what you say because I appreciate your intellectual honesty. Because I think some of the problems we have in the UFO field, far too many people, you know what they're going to do? They'll go there and they'll insist till their dying day that an event is true even though it's not.
Because really, how often do UFOs land in a place that was an easy bus ride from Levittown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up? It had to be real. Okay, now this is, I think we can go into my motives for believing that so strongly in much more depth. But I guess for the moment I'm using that to illustrate that at least in some cases of physical evidence, it really is not so. Now, you or Jerry or somebody who knows the evidence much better than I do can present me with other cases which I cannot dismiss so easily. So what am I going to do? Do I have, and perhaps this is the basic epistemological question, do I have the right to say that given that the arguments against the physical reality of UFOs seem so strong to me, given that, do I have the right to say dogmatically there must be a natural explanation, be it hoaxes, misinterpretations, whatever, or conceivably some natural phenomenon we don't yet fully understand, that there must be some such explanation even if I can't point to it. I can understand and respect those who say that this is closed-minded dogmatism. I would continue to maintain that it's legitimate and that it's what I need to do if I'm to reserve my powers and my time for the questions that I find interesting.
You know, one thing, David, that you could say is you can say, well, okay, this is an unknown phenomenon. We don't know what causes it, and it's possible that phenomenon can cause physical effects even if there's no ET.
Yeah, and when you think about it, to say that it's ET is not much different from that. Because I remember when I was a kid, people would say to me, hey, if we had these visitors from other planets, would they just zip around our skies? Wouldn't they announce themselves somehow? Would this go on year after year? And I always had the same counter argument. It's that we don't know what their position is, therefore we can't put ourselves in their position and ask what would they be likely to do. Now, that always seemed to me a convincing counter-argument. I did not grasp that once you say that, calling UFOs extraterrestrial spaceships has no explanatory power whatsoever, because nothing follows from it.
Well, yeah, this is, I'm of two minds here. I think we're dealing with a multifarious phenomena. And, there are cases, very good cases, where physical evidence appears to have been obtained. I know Ted Phillips investigated a case in Delphos, Kansas, that left behind fluorescing material that fluoresced, I think, for about a half a day or 18 hours after the object was there. And we've had vitrified soil. Ray Stanford at the Socorro case came up with some incredible evidence, paper with what appeared to be particle beam type burns in it, smoking rabbit brush and chamiso was seen around the landing site by Lonnie Zamora. Samples of the charred plants were taken. I think we do have a body of cases that do reflect some sort of physicality. But again, I'm disagreeing with you on one hand, but I'm also agreeing with you on another hand. I don't see this mystery as being fully manifest as a nuts and bolts phenomenon, and that's not saying that we don't have cases that we obviously have cases that are, I think, very physical in nature, but that's why it makes this whole thing so confusing and so intriguing, at least for people like ourselves here. It's always going to keep you guessing. As soon as you think you have it pinned down, it supplies you with the data to refute any theories or any leanings that you might have. So I do think that there are physical cases, but I think not all of them are.
And we'll get into more of those details in a moment with Dave Halpern and his response. We're going to phrase as a cliffhanger. We're going to make his response a cliffhanger because that's the way radio goes, you know? And that way you'll tune in after the announcements and after we take care of a few pieces of business to find out what he's talking about and what he has to say about what Chris commented on with regard to physical trace evidence. Dave Halperin is the author of a book called Journal of a UFO Investigator, coming out this month, a novel. I'm Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. You're in
the Paracast.
You expect professional service from your doctor, your accountant, and even the girl who takes your morning coffee order. Why not from your domain registrar, too? Namecheap.com provides stellar service with no sneaky upselling. We offer more features and security options for your website than there are ways to order a latte. And new domains come with a WhoIsGuard to protect your personal info. At Namecheap.com, you can get your domain for as low as $2.99. Now is a great time to get to know Namecheap.com.
Hey neighbors, Nuance offers Dragon speech recognition for a variety of platforms. Dragon Dictate for Mac, Dragon Naturally Speaking 11 for Windows, and Dragon mobile apps for BlackBerry, iPhone, and iPad. No matter how you compute, Dragon instantly converts what you say into text, helping you be more productive just by talking. Find out more at getdragon.com. That's getdragon.com. getdragon.com.
Peter Cronschnabel from Midas Resources. Today is February 4th, 2011. Gold opened this morning at $13.50.10. A 1-ounce gold coin can be purchased for $13.85.26, $692.63 for a half ounce, and $346.32 for a quarter ounce. $13.85.26, $692.63, and $346.32.
The Constitution and the Bill of Rights have been reduced to old relics politicians ignore, trample with their outlandish, overreaching policies. Your support of the Campaign for Liberty stands in the way of this insidious process. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. I've teamed up with the Campaign for Liberty to offer the authentic proof quarter-ounce pure gold coin. For only $390 plus shipping, Midas will donate $100 to this incredible organization. Help fight big government by ordering your gold coin at 800-686-2237. You get to win twice by owning gold and fighting an overreaching government. Call 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
This message starts with a great offer from Big Berkey Water Filters because we don't want you drinking dangerous water 1 minute longer. Right now, purchase any filter system from BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com to get your choice of 2 Berkey Sport bottles, a KDF shower filter, a set of fluoride filters, or our new Sight Glass spigot absolutely free. Why do this? Because over 60% of municipal water is fluoridated, and at less than 2 cents per gallon, Berkey Water Filters purify both treated and untreated water, removing dangerous chlorine, fluoride, and other contaminants. Big Berkey water filters are powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water, so they're perfect for rainwater collection systems and emergency preparedness. Remember, Big Berkey includes free shipping on every order over $50, and GCN listeners get 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit BIGBERKEY waterfilters.com or call 877-99-BERKEY. That's BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com or call today 1-877-99-BERKEY. Did you know that drinking pure, high alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health? Most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of only the most alkaline minerals. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins, and helps you regain health and energy. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen content, and raises the pH of your body to healthy levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKAvision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, we have hundreds of shows for you to download direct from theparacast.com. That's theparacast.com. Or check us out on iTunes.
We return with David Halperin, author of Journal of a UFO Investigator, a novel. Our co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. Okay, David, I put it to you, the physical traces that Chris is talking about. Okay. Is it still some kind of mental phenomenon? Can we create reality, with our minds or some external force like that?
I don't think so, at least not in the way that it would have to be to explain UFO traces. Now, there is an extraordinary book, which I read about 25 years ago. I don't know if either of you are familiar with it, by Morton Schatzman, called The Story of Ruth. About Schatzman was, and I think still is, a psychiatrist, and he dealt with a woman patient who had been sexually abused in her childhood, who was totally functional in her adult life. She had just one very unusual property. She was able to hallucinate things, including in his office, which he and she agreed were not physically present, and yet which she experienced as though they were. At one point, I think she tried the experiment, I think at home, I don't think it was in his office, of when her husband was away, hallucinating her husband and having very good sex with the hallucinated husband. And
she should get workshops.
Yeah. And at one point, Schatzman, and this is the thing I most remember of the book, Schatzman quotes a line from Hamlet where Hamlet sees his father's ghost, and he's in his mother's presence, and he says to her, "Do you see nothing?" And she says, "I see nothing, yet all there is I see." And Schatzman asks, "I wonder, how did she know that all there is I see?" So I think this book puts into question what our minds can construct of reality, and yet to go so far as to say that our psychological constructions can make holes in the ground, that I would not do. I think Jung himself, in his classic book on flying saucers, says that he doesn't understand how archetypal phenomena can appear on radar screens.
Well, how about something? Let's change our focus here a little bit onto another seemingly miraculous type manifestation of phenomenon, and that would be stigmata. I go back to Padre Pio and some of this stigmata, the stigmatists. I'm not sure how you would say plural, but we do have a pretty good evidence that stigmata is a real thing. Padre Pio, of course, the famous priest back in the 50s and 60s, was examined by scientists, and he did indeed have supposedly the wounds of Christ. Now, David, would you think that this is a spontaneous manifestation of faith? Could this be such a psychological fixation on piety and the rest of it that he could actually physically manifest these wounds? Or do you think it's something that's miraculous or something that cannot be explained with modern psychology or modern science?
I don't know that those are the only two alternatives. How about if we consider the possibility it might be a perfectly natural phenomenon that's outside the bounds of modern medical thought, but that may be within its bounds in the 22nd or 23rd century?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, there's always that possibility, but it seems pretty interesting that the wound should correspond with the supposed wounds of Christ and the rest of it. I personally feel that it's probably some sort of psychosomatic effect of extreme devotion and piety and this will to want it so bad subconsciously that it actually occurs.
I would agree. I would completely agree. My only caveat would be that I do not know that we yet understand the mechanism.
Right. Well, how about if we compound that? How about if we compound that ability of one person to very remarkably affect their own physical body? What's to say that the collective human psyche couldn't manifest a real phenomenon? You know, this is something that I don't think enough people have done work on as it relates to the paranormal, as it relates to UFOs. We do suspect that young, troubled adolescent girls tend to be the ones that are at the center of a poltergeist outbreak. Here's another example of physical manifestation of phenomena that seems to be centered around a triggering individual. And, you know, I think quite a bit of study has been done over the years, actually for over 100 years, on the poltergeist phenomena. And there does seem to be what appears to be a relationship between young adolescents and the manifestation of poltergeist type effects. So I think that there's wiggle room on both sides of this particular argument.
Well, I mean, Freud's favorite quotation was, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than dreamt of in your philosophy."
And then there's probably even more than that.
Yeah. Do you know the story about Freud and that quotation? It's told in the unabridged version of Jones's biography of Freud, that Ernest Jones, one of Freud's early disciples, was sitting up late with him. I guess they were up 2 and 3 in the morning, and Freud was telling ghost stories. And Jones kept saying, no, this can't be. You can't believe this. And Freud just kept saying, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than dreamt of in your philosophy." And finally, Jones said, "Look, if you start believing in this stuff, you're going to start believing in angels." And Freud says, "Yes, and even der lieber Herr, the good Lord." And Jones said afterwards, "I assumed he was being ironic, but there was a strange look in his eye that gave me pause." So I think I will be like that 3 o'clock in the morning Freud.
Well, you know what? Alan Greenfield and I at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, strange, 3 o'clock in the morning, decided that UFOs were really beings and craft from other dimensions. And we looked at this book, this classic fantasy fiction book called The Incomplete Enchanter. On the base of that, which I guess was 2 short novels in one book, as I recall. I read this thing, 12,000 years ago. And we came up with this theory, and then everybody was talking about UFOs from other dimensions. So maybe we caught a wave, but who knows? There's another interesting phenomenon in the UFO field, and it relates to something where you had a connection between ancient ascension traditions and UFO abductions, and I'm going to want to ask you about that when we return. We have David Halperin. He's author of a novel called Journal of a UFO Investigator, about the teen UFO, as they say, experience fictionalized. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You can download a version that is mostly full-featured. Try it out, and if you like it, it's just $34.95 for Graphic Converter from lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKESOFT.com. lemkesoft.com for my favorite Graphic Converter.
If you own a septic system or if you're facing costly septic system replacement, this message is for you. When you want to stop paying for pump outs and avoid backups, when you've had enough of the foul odors and costly repairs, use BioSafe One Septic Solution. Now there's an easy-to-use 100% guaranteed answer to all your septic system problems. BioSafe One Septic Solution. BioSafe One is patented and made specifically for all septic systems and made by the same team of scientists who helped clean up the Exxon Valdez oil spill. BioSafe One decontaminates and removes sludge, stops costly pump outs and repairs, and removes septic system stench, all with a 100% success rate. See what gives BioSafe One Septic Solution the advantage over any other septic product at biosafeone.com. That's BIOSAFEONE.com. biosafeone.com. Or call toll-free 1-866-424-6663. That's 1-866-424-6663. BioSafe One, the guaranteed bio-friendly, money-saving way to clean your septic system.
Where have all the military surplus stores gone? Don't worry, you don't need one, because everything you need at Military Surplus is at MaineMilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E Military.com, one of the last surviving true military surplus stores in the country. Go online now to MaineMilitary.com and discover a source for hard-to-find surplus items at true surplus prices. Surplus gun cleaning kits as low as $2.99. Complete chemical suits as low as $11.99. See our huge selection of gas masks, filters, and accessories. Finish and M10 gas masks are 3 for $30, and Swiss filters are 3 for $12. Searching for Strike Anywhere matches? MaineMilitary.com has them, plus a whole new product line of survival and first aid kits and lots more. Get free shipping on orders over $50 only at MaineMilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E Military.com, or call 877-608-0179, 877-608-0179. MaineMilitary.com, the main name in military supply. At hempusa.org, we offer chemical-free products to people around the world, detoxifying, self-healing while rebuilding the immune system. We urge our listeners to please consider our largest-selling product, microplant powder. Our microplant powder is rich in silica and probiotics to help rebuild the immune system and to create a healthy stomach flora. Microplant powder is excellent for daily intake and is perfect to add to your storage shelter. We urge our listeners to please visit us at hempusa.org. And remember, all of our products are chemical-free and healthy to eat. We constantly strive to give you the best service, highest quality, and rapid shipping anywhere. And we offer free shipping on orders over $95 in the U.S. Please visit us at hempusa.org or call 908-691-2608. That's 908-691-2608. See what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you at hempusa.org.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We have David Halperin joining us. I don't think he's ever been on a paranormal radio show before. Is that correct, David?
That is correct.
This is your debut. After this, it'll be the last you ever do. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberger in the Paracast. So you're telling me here you wrote this paper comparing the ancient ascension traditions to UFO abductions. I bring it up because there's a big controversy in the UFO field now, as there always is a controversy, this one, about the abductions and methodology of two well-known researchers, Dr. David Jacobs from Temple University and, of course, Bud Hopkins. But let's not talk about that so much as this paper. How do you stage this comparison, David?
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to have to introduce two Hebrew words here. And one of them is Merkava, that's, you can spell that in English letters as Merkavah, and the other is Hechalot, Hekhalot, and the KH is pronounced as if you're clearing your throat. Now, the Merkava is Hebrew for chariot, and it's usually used to refer to the thing that Ezekiel saw in that vision we're talking about. Now, in ancient times, in the first 2 or perhaps 3 centuries of the Christian era, the rabbis who put Judaism into the form that we know it today spoke of the Merkava as being a topic that people must not study. You can't study it at all unless you're wise and can understand on your own. It's really pretty dangerous to get involved in it. One boy studied part of the details of Ezekiel's chariot, and fire came forth from that part of the chariot and devoured him. Okay, now, at some point, there seem to have been people who carried that fascination with Ezekiel's chariot to actually attempt a shamanic-type journey to visit it. And by shamanic type, I mean that your body stays still, your soul wanders, and you go to see for yourself the things that Ezekiel saw. Or as I would say, you hallucinate, seeing for yourself the things that Ezekiel saw. And there are a number of very strange texts coming down to us. They're in Hebrew. They seem to have been written sometime around the 5th, 6th centuries of the Christian era, called the Hechalot texts, that give descriptions of the worlds of the Merkava, the worlds of the chariot, all the angels, the fiery rivers, all sorts of weird stuff associated with it, and the hymns and the songs that you speak when you want to journey to the chariot, which very oddly is called going down to the chariot. You'd think you'd be going the other way, but they speak of going down to when you go to the chariot, going back when you're coming back. Now, it seemed to me that these journeys to the chariot are very much like what modern abductees describe when they're taken to the UFO. As with the UFO abductions, they don't fly in the chariot. They don't ride in the chariot. The chariot is the goal of the journey. As in modern UFO abductions, the feature of eyes, that is EYES, huge and terrifying, play an important role. And as in the UFO abductions, the situation of the trance is important. I think there's only one really clear example of this from the ancient Hebrew Hechalot text, but it describes how the participants are in a circle, and one of them is going on this trance journey to the chariot, and he's reporting on what he sees, which is very much like what you see in transcripts of these hypnotic sessions, in which the abductee describes his or her experience and relives it in this situation. And I asked, how are we going to explain these resemblances? Now, I don't know whether it was the question that shocked the person who read my paper, whom I'll talk about in a moment, or whether it was the answer I gave, and I gave it as a provisional answer, a working hypothesis that we're dealing with screen memories of actual experiences of sexual abuse. I don't know whether it was the question, I don't know whether it was the answer, but when I sent the paper out to a very distinguished journal of religious studies, it was sent to one referee, contrary to the almost universal principle of sending it to two referees, and the referee wrote back without any explanation that if I meant this paper seriously, I should be subject to prosecution for criminal malpractice.
No, you're kidding me.
Not a bit. Not a bit.
Oh, my goodness. So much for the openness of academia, huh?
Okay, so this is very interesting to me. Okay, so you raise the specter of some kind of sexual abuse. Now, that means, again, that we should have psychiatrists examining these abductees about their early history to see where this abuse may have occurred. Now, is there any basic empirical evidence that this is the case?
that in C.D.B. Bryan's Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, Bud Hopkins, this I find just an incredible resource. There are extended transcripts of Bud Hopkins's interviews with two women who speak of abduction, and one of them has fairly explicit memories of having been molested by her father, and Hopkins tries, not very successfully, to convince her that the molestation was actually carried out by UFO aliens, while her father watched helplessly.
Okay, so let's just really summarize this very quickly here as we go on. Okay, so when someone says, oh, E.T. took me aboard their spaceship, and they took sexual samples, or I had intercourse with an alien, this is a reflection in your mind of reinterpreting this horrible sexual abuse at some point in your life.
Yes, I offered that as a working hypothesis, and I want to stress that, because although I was able to answer your challenge in terms of giving empirical evidence, I cannot do it across the board. And in fact, you mentioned two of the most distinguished hypnotists who work with UFO abductions. There is a third, of course, that we need to mention, who was in fact, he's now deceased through a tragic accident. This is John Mack, who was professor of psychiatry at Harvard. And Mack does raise the possibility that we're dealing with screen memories of sexual abuse. He doesn't believe it, and given his expertise, I would take his doubt very seriously. But at the same time, I see many cases where there are just intriguing details in the abduction stories that he presents that one would expect a psychiatrist to follow up on, and he does not.
Isn't that unfortunate, too? I mean, whether you agree with the methods of David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins, I mean, I get the sense they're sincere in what they're doing, but the problem being here, and the criticism I make so often of them, is that we need professional therapists to look into these cases. If it's not E.T. abducting us, if there's something else going on in the life histories of these people, they're troubled people. They need some sort of help, and we need to provide it, and evidently they're not getting the kind of help they need. We're helping explain a lot of things here with David Halperin. The book is called Journal of a UFO Investigator. It is a novel, ladies and gentlemen, which means, maybe it's based on fact, ripped from the headlines or their life experiences, but still fiction. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Ray Perkins, a reclusive veteran burned out from the Gulf War, lives tortured by relentless, perplexing nightmares. Nightmares of a horrific battle in deep space and of a mysterious woman suffering in agony for her devastated world. A woman not yet born, calling across centuries to him. Then, a coincidence leads him to his destiny, his chance to alter the universe. Attack of the Rockoids. The former fiction editor for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Robert Simpson, writes, "The soul of the novel Attack of the Rockoids lies in its heart and passion for building a convincing tale of a love that spans the galaxy. A thrilling story. Attack of the Rockoids is available now. Read a sample chapter and get a special discount off of the cover price at our website, rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com. Attack of the Rockoids, a novel in the grand science fiction tradition.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hi, I'm Don Wiskin, and have you ever wondered what the garlic cayenne drops could do for you? February is Heart Month, and we want you to find out just what can happen when you take the right combination of herbs designed to maintain our cardiovascular health. Purchase a 4-month supply of Extendovite drops or capsules, plus get a bonus month supply of capsules for only $125 plus shipping. That's 5 months worth of Extendovite for $25 per month. This is a Heart Month special to help get you started on your path to better health and ends February 28th. So don't be left out. Find out what Extendovite can do for you. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hi, I'm Mark Craighead, founder of Crossbreed Holsters. I designed our top-selling holster, the Super Tuck Deluxe, to solve the problems of being poked, pinched, and gouged while carrying concealed. The Super Tuck Deluxe is the most comfortable, most concealable holster on the market today. We offer a 2-week free trial and a lifetime warranty.
Visit us at crossbreedholsters.com. Don't forget, crossbreedholsters.com.
If you're serious about playing college football, give yourself the competitive edge with the National Underclassmen Football Combine. The NUC is the longest-running underclassmen event and the most respected combine and football camp in the nation, specifically designed to give athletes early recruiting exposure. There's no better time than now to compete in the National Underclassmen Football Combine. Call 888-NUC-MVP1 or go to nationalunderclassmen.com to find out more.
Fight back this cold and flu season with the world's best garlic extract, Ali C. Why Ali C? Because it helps your body fight viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Ali C has been scientifically proven in double-blind studies using low doses to greatly reduce the number, severity, and duration of common colds. Ali C contains 300 milligrams of stabilized allicin, the active ingredient in crushed garlic. Studies show Ali C is effective against MRSA, bacterial, fungal, and viral infections. One tablet of Ali C has the equivalent of 40 cloves of garlic. Ali C supports your body's resistance to all types of conditions and can help lower high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So boost your body's resistance to infection with nature's best garlic extract, Ali C. For more information and to order Ali C, call 877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com. That's 1-877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com for your Ali C today.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
You're in the Paracast. You never know what's going to happen next.
We return with David Halperin, and we're talking about UFO abductions. You're in the Paracast with Gene Steinberg and Chris O'Brien. So, okay, and I guess the point I raised here that you were about to answer, David, is that we should be getting professionals in there. These people have problems, even if it's ET, if it's not ET, if it's some psychological disturbance, if it is sexual abuse, it's real serious. We got to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For all I know, it does help them to believe that these are UFO abductions and to be taken seriously by people like Hopkins or David Jacobs, who is a pretty distinguished scholar in his own right. I think he's professor of history at Temple University, and the late John Mack. So I don't know that any harm has been done to these people by the people who've seen them as being abducted by aliens. At the same time, it's possible to question whether there's another interpretation of the data. And to me, one of the primary data is the intense emotional reality that these experiences seem to have for the people, which goes back to the beginning of the abduction tradition, to Betty and Barney Hill, and to what everybody seems to concede, that Barney Hill, when he started recovering the memories of his abduction, was in a state of utter terror. The psychiatrist, who had not one bit of belief in the reality of the abduction, the psychiatrist said he was afraid that Barney Hill was going to throw himself out the office window. He was so scared. So we've got to find some way to account for the intense, the reality of the emotional reaction.
Okay, so you're suggesting that maybe there's a possibility that both Barney and Betty Hill were subject to some kind of sexual abuse? Both of them?
Possibly, or possibly Barney, because and I'm drawing on Philip Klaus, who I know is the late Philip Klaus. Klaus was a very convinced UFO skeptic, and of course Klaus stresses that when he listens to the tapes of Betty Hill, it sounds like she's just going to the store. But he acknowledges that Barney Hill had gone through some absolutely wrenching experience. What it was, I do not know. Now, with Betty, and I've given as my working hypothesis that it's some sort of sexual trauma. But with Betty and Barney Hill, who are the beginning of the UFO abduction tradition, we've got another issue that comes in, and that I think complements what the idea of sexual trauma, and that is that Barney was black, Betty was white. And if I ask, how did Barney's ancestors come to this country? My guess would be that they were abducted in the middle of the night and taken to a waiting ship.
And that's a very interesting insight. So you're saying there could be some sort of generational process going on where he's got some sort of genetic memory even of a traumatic event that then is manifested in this particular on this particular roadside in New Hampshire. It sounds interesting in theory. I'm not sure if it's workable. You'd have to establish a link between, his great-great-great-grandparents or however many generations back it would be, and his actual, his actual experience. I think the fact that the two of them in the early 60s being together as an interracial couple, I've always felt that's a point that needs to be looked at, I think. But in the overall working hypothesis that you have here about sexual trauma, repressed sexual trauma, and the manifestation of screen imaging to sort of give us this abduction scenario, I'm not sure it may work. At least in my mind, it may work for a sizable percentage of cases, but it's not going to explain all of them by any stretch. I do sense a very deeply psychological liminal element that's involved in the abduction phenomena, but I don't think that repressed sexual angst is going to explain all your cases. There's just too many good quality cases out there with too much documentation about a person's personal history for that to be an overarching explanation. What other types of psychological scenarios could we look at to possibly explain maybe some of these other cases?
I don't know. But I think you would agree, would you not, that the sexual element in the abduction stories tends to be extremely strong.
Yes, it is. It's a theme that tends to run through a majority of cases. Not all, but you do have that what appears on the surface to be a fascination with the human sexual organs, which I find kind of strange. Terence McKenna came up with a pretty interesting comment. He said he had a hard time believing that there were pro bono proctologists coming to make unannounced house calls from another planet, and that's always been something that's kind of annoyed me about the whole mystery, is that there does seem to be this preoccupation with human sexuality. And these medieval quality experiments that go on that don't even reflect the level of technology that we have now today in the modern world. And if they're so far advanced of us, why are they stooping to levels of medical procedures that aren't even up to our standards? So there is definitely, I think I agree with you, there is definitely some psychological aspect to many of these cases, and it does seem to center around some sort of sexual trauma. I do agree, but again, it's not a blanket explanation. That it's not a one-size-fits-all explanation.
No, I would agree. That was why I was so tentative in my putting it forth. I think I felt like I was shining a flashlight into the darkness, and I don't claim that it illuminated every corner of it. But Chris, I wanted to go back to it because this reminds me of your stigmata. You remember the story of Barney Hill, that one of the symptoms, among the symptoms that drove him and Betty to seek psychiatric help there were some really serious ones like high blood pressure, ulcers, but there was also one minor but distinctly weird symptom, which was an almost perfect circle of warts that appeared around his groin, which in his recollection, in the memories that came up, were associated with some sort of a suction cup that was put over his genitalia.
Yeah, that's a detail I kind of forgot, but now that you mention it, it rings a bell. Wow. You could come up with other explanations for genital warts in a circular fashion. I won't go there. But yeah, that is a detail that you don't hear very often when people bring up the Hill case. I have heard, I think, a tape of his, or portions of the tape of his, I think, wasn't he hypnotically regressed? And then there's a tape out there where he's screaming. And it definitely sounds like he's reliving something very horrific.
Yeah.
But a suction cup around the genitalia, I don't know, my mind just...
I think we shouldn't go there. But, here's an important point of view here. Okay, we have a lot of people who have made the claim or they have the feeling that they've been abducted. And, of course, we have, as I said, these investigators, some of whom suggest that they are being groomed for hybrid aliens, aliens in Earth people. Regardless, how do we get to the bottom of it? We have a lot of troubled people out there who need some kind of treatment, who need some kind of, as they say, I won't want to use that term, need some kind of understanding of what happened to them. How do we get there?
Well, I'm wondering if the question of whether the therapeutic question is quite the same thing as the scientific or historical question. I mean, that there is what I call the scientific/historical question of just what did create these memories. And I'm going to assume for a moment it was not leading questions by the hypnotist, which is a hypothesis that also needs to be taken seriously.
I'll tell you what, not to interrupt you, David, I want to get into that and explore the possibilities in our next segment. We want you to participate in our Paracast forums. Yes, we do. Here's how you do it. Go to forum.paracast.com. That is forum.paracast.com. Once you're there, you give yourself a unique username to sign up. You can't use Gene Steinberg. I don't even think you can use Captain Marvel. But give yourself a name, and then we invite you to read and participate in our forums. We have David Halperin. The book is Journal of a UFO Investigator, a novel. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, Ted Anderson announcing a great way to listen to radio on the telephone. By calling 760-569-7700, you'll be hearing GCNlive.com programs in seconds. Come to GCNlive.com, find your favorite host's dedicated phone number, and hear them 24/7. You heard me right. Every show has a dedicated phone number. Stop by GCNlive.com and bookmark their number today. And again, that's 760-569-7700. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
This takes us to the final 4 segments of our episode with David Halperin. And our co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast, and we're exploring, of course, the meaning or possible meaning behind UFO abductions. So let's continue. You started an answer. I had to interrupt you. I'd like you to continue it.
Yeah, I think there's the historical question of what gives rise to these memories or pseudo-memories. And then there is a therapeutic question of, given that you've got people who are in pain, although it seems for the most part functional, given that they're in some pain, how best do you ease their pain, increase their functionality? And the two answers may not be the same. It may be more useful for them to believe that they've been abducted by extraterrestrial beings, but that does not make that the correct answer to the historical scientific question. Am I making sense there?
Right. In other words, in some cases, the screen memory may be healthier for the individual than having to go through the shock and trauma of reliving the real thing, is what you're kind of referring to, correct?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I don't know just how you deal, what is the best way of dealing with traumatized people?
You know, that's a tough one, and that's why, again, going back to Gene's comment that, we really do need to bring the powers of modern psychology and maybe psychiatry into this whole abduction field, because there's too many people playing with dynamite out there when they're using hypnotic regression to bring troubled people back into a place of reliving certain very traumatic events, whether they be real or screen memories. And I really do agree with Gene that we need to have trained professionals doing this type of work, and that an amateur could, have the best of intentions, but could accidentally really create some further problems, I think, psychologically for some of these folks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would wonder, is there any documented case of people being injured by being hypnotized by people like Bud Hopkins or David Jacobs?
How do you know? I mean, we have this one claim by a woman in New Zealand who claims she was mentally abused by David Jacobs, but that's, of course, controversial and still subject to dispute. But then if a person is made to believe something that didn't happen, they think that, you know what, E.T. came down here, took your sperm, raped you, whatever, and they're creating hybrid beings. Maybe you even have hybrid children. That's a pretty nasty state of affairs if it's true. And if you believe something that's false, it doesn't help you resolve the conflict within you.
Okay, I would accept that. And I wonder if I could polemicize for a moment in support of my kind of a priori turning away from the ET hypothesis, to say, if we ask what makes more sense to explain highly sexualized memories, is it experiments by extraterrestrial beings who we don't know why they should be so interested in our sexual equipment, or memories that relate to that come from within us because we're going to be really interested in our own sexual equipment? It would seem to me the second alternative makes a heck of a lot more sense.
And then you've still, again, the acceptance. So do you have a proposal here to offer about getting more professionals in here to understand what's going on? Because certainly if someone is sexually abused, we want to find out who the offender is, a family member or somebody who is not part of the family. Certainly if this is happening from not just a psychological standpoint, but from a legal standpoint, we have to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, though there you get into other problems, which is what brought the whole sexual abuse memories idea into discredit in the 1990s, which is that people tended to forget that what is adequate historical evidence is not necessarily adequate legal evidence for putting somebody in jail.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a statute of limitations after a certain number of years. Even if you knew who did the offense, you can't do anything about it.
Right. And really, I mean, the law requires beyond reasonable doubt. History doesn't. History requires balance of probability.
Okay, so going back through history, are we saying then the ancient traditions were also involving cases of some sort of sexual abuse?
Yes.
Well, you also have...
That may have been what spooked out my referee.
It could be a combination of causal elements as well. The whole idea of sleep paralysis relating to the medieval incubi and succubi, for instance.
Yeah.
If a constellation of life history events come together in a certain way, possibly that might be an equation that then triggers what appears to be to the witness or to the experiencer. It appears to be an abduction scenario. Perhaps you need a combination of events in a person's life coming together subconsciously to then create, and manifest an abduction type experience in their present day scenario. I personally had what I consider to be an encounter experience when I was 6, just turned 7, back in Bellevue, Washington. And this was a fully conscious experience with, again, your number 3. There possibly was a 4th being involved in this, but I was followed around my neighborhood, basically 3 different houses on my street at 3 in the morning by these entities that were about the same size as me. And I don't recall any sort of abduction experience, and I don't think I was gone long enough to really fall into that particular missing time category. But I don't recall any sort of physical contact. I don't recall any sort of trauma involving some sort of experimentation or being taken anywhere. So there are cases that kind of fall through the cracks in this particular subject matter where people have up close and personal experiences but don't appear to have interacted in a physical way with these screen images, aliens, however you want to call them. So how do you reconcile these cases along with, obviously, what we've been talking about?
I don't. All I can say is that this is something that's outside the explanatory power of my model, and I'd have to hear more details about your experience, and I would still be guessing. I would think probably my first questions to you would be, how did the memories of is there any correlation with how these memories arose? What did the experience mean to you? Questions of that sort, which actually I would be completely fascinated hearing your answer to.
Well, again, it was not something I was looking for. I had not been exposed to the mass media or popular culture. I hadn't seen science fiction movies. I had not been exposed, at least to my knowledge now, looking back. I was kind of sheltered from TV and movies and that sort of thing until I was about 8 or 9. It was a fully conscious experience. I remembered it vividly the next day. My whole family heard about it. Of course, I was sleepwalking and had a nightmare, but I knew better. I had a physical. I actually tried to run out my kitchen door and forgot that my dad had put the screen on and banged into the door. So I knew I was awake. So if I was having some sort of experience that was sleepwalking, it was. I was really deep out, if you want to put it that way, which I don't think I was. But, there are other cases like this. I had a very interesting case that occurred to me. I had the sensation of invisible energies entering my room. This is only 1 or 2 times I've ever had this feeling, and it was very vivid in my. I just felt it physically that there was something invisible in my room, in a group of them. And I found out 2 weeks later that my neighbor had a group, literally my neighbor, I mean, not even 40 yards away, at about the same time period, had a group of these, your typical alien grays come through the wall like water, she described them, and they seemed to be fixated on her son who was in his crib, in a crib next to her bed, and she was very frightened of this and banished them out of the room. Now, this is the wife of the widow of R.D. Lang, a very, super on the ball, very smart, astute lady. And
I'll tell you what, we'll talk about this in more detail in our next segment. We have David Halperin. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-877-804-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. So, disable the cable and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV right now to sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and up to 4 rooms. And there's no equipment to buy. That includes your free HD TV upgrade, your free DVR 5-star upgrade, and your free professional installation. And the best part? The pristine digital picture and sound. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. So, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV. Disable the cable, cut costs, and get more. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV.
I'm Roger Rao at Midas Resources. If you are going through a financial roller coaster because of your investment in stocks, bonds, and other paper assets, perhaps you're ready for a change. You have an opportunity to change your financial security. Get the stability and peace of mind you deserve by investing in precious metals. Gold and silver have been a form of wealth protection for over 5,000 years all over the world. If you have seen your hard-earned money lose value because of inflation, sliding dollar, etc., it's time you stop the bleeding. The answer to your problems is simple. Gold and silver will protect your assets and your purchasing power, physical possession of precious metals, IRA rollover, etc. Call me, Roger Rao, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 178. Take action today when we are still accepting paper dollars for gold and silver. Ready for a change? Call Roger Rao at 1-800-686-2237, extension 178. Again, it's 1-800-686-2237, extension 178.
There's mounting evidence suggesting that there are people, governments, corporations, and whole professions intent on short-circuiting humanity's well-being. GMO, food legislation protecting big agriculture, the attempted elimination of vitamins and alternative medicines, it seems their hand has been tipped. They want to dictate your health, wealth, and your longevity. Whatever the outcome, we have a solution. Wild edible food. Why worry about food when all has been provided? We imagine that we were ejected from the garden and never invited back, but the garden's still here. There is an endless wild abundance which grows all over our green earth, just waiting for you to wake up and see it. Let author Linda Runyon teach you how to see, know, get, prepare, store, and eat wild edible food. Save money, add nutrition, and ignore the noise when you go shopping in nature's supermarket. Go to ofthefield.com and get started today. Or call 1-888-51-EAT-FREE. That's ofthefield.com or call 1-888-51-EAT-FREE and begin to see a different world.
If you own a septic system or if you're facing costly septic system replacement, this message is for you. When you want to stop paying for pump outs and avoid backups, when you've had enough of the foul odors and costly repairs, use BioSafe One Septic Solution. Now there's an easy-to-use 100% guaranteed answer to all your septic system problems. BioSafe One Septic Solution. BioSafe One is patented and made specifically for all septic systems and made by the same team of scientists who helped clean up the Exxon Valdez oil spill. BioSafe One decontaminates and removes sludge, stops costly pump outs and repairs, and removes septic system stench, all with a 100% success rate. See what gives BioSafe One Septic Solution the advantage over any other septic product at biosafeone.com. That's BIOSAFEONE.com. biosafeone.com. Or call toll-free 1-866-424-6663. That's 1-866-424-6663. BioSafe One, the guaranteed bio-friendly, money-saving way to clean your septic system.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com. Get in on all the action at forum.theparacast.com.
Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear, the teen UFO years. And I won't try to imitate the late Fred Foy, who was the announcer of the Lone Ranger, and also the Dick Cavett Show, as a matter of fact. We have David Halperin, our co-host Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberger in the Paracast, and you were telling us something, Chris, that I want you to continue, please.
Well, the point I'm bringing up is here's a me having what I consider. I do consider myself to be very aware, and I journal, I write everything down. I've got pretty good sense of my environment, and to have a very unusual experience then occur the same night. I find out 2 weeks later that my neighbor had something even more manifest than I did. occur to her, a super, what I would call credible witness. And she had a very special son, too, and that's why she thought that they were interested in him. But the reason why I bring this up is simple. Not all encounter cases have this sexual element to them. They don't have physical interaction between the victim, witness, and these screen images or physical beings, if you will.
Yeah.
Is there possibly, and this is my question, is there possibly a way to figure out, to differentiate between the causal elements in this? I think possibly someone that has manifested a constellation of psychological events. I'm going with your theory here. Let's say witnesses manifest a certain constellation of psychological factors through their history and through their lives. And if they do have sexual abuse, possibly those are the cases that then turn into the cases where you have some sort of physical examination and some sort of sexual element involved. What do you think of that?
And what I'm hearing you saying is that there is some phenomenon that lies beyond that in people with this constellation will appear as sexual experimentation, and in others will take other and perhaps more benign forms. Am I hearing you right?
Exactly. So if you do have some sort of sexual trauma in your life, whether it be inadvertent or otherwise, probably the most intense ones are when you have, familial, incestuous type sexual trauma.
Yeah.
Would be probably the most traumatic. But possibly that's what we're seeing here, is we're seeing a compiling of psychological factors that if it includes some sort of sexual trauma, then it manifests itself in a more sexually oriented scenario within the abduction framework.
That makes perfect sense to me. It's beyond the range of my flashlight.
Gene, can we get this guy one of the 1,000,000 candle power spotlights so we can really shine it on it?
Yeah.
We're a low-budget show, Chris. I don't think we're in a position to shine that kind of light. We try.
What I'm thinking here is that I ought to pursue this a little bit, that it seems to me that if we perceive, and this again is my polemic, okay, that if we perceive the essential UFO mystery as being this sort of thing, then I think we've got a good chance, I won't say of solving it, but of understanding it more in another 10 or 20 years if we pursue this kind of line of inquiry.
Right. Of course, we're not talking about, we're not bringing into it supposed implants and the physicality of scars and other things that, allegedly are related to this. I'm still uncertain in my mind that many of these cases are legitimate in terms of having supposed physical evidence, although there are some cases that are pretty hard to argue with, where abductees exhibit real physical signs of being traumatized. You mentioned, Barney Hill and the genital warts scenario. But I agree with you. I think that we need to be more out of the box with this. I think we need to bring in, as Gene said, more professional interest in this subject. We need funding. We need a way to create a scenario where we can do hard science in the abduction phenomenon. W.C. Levengood, who is a biophysicist at the Grass Lakes Biophysical Laboratory in Wisconsin, came up with an idea of putting hair into curlers and having abductees have these curlers in their hair and have ungerminated seeds in these curlers to study the effect of the experience scientifically, energetically on the actual ungerminated seeds. I think it's a brilliant idea, and we need more thinking like that to really, I think, ascertain scientifically what's going on, and at the same time look at it more deeply from the psychological level.
One thing that bothers me, which I should mention before we go on, David and Chris, is that, I've suggested we got to have webcams in there, in the bedrooms of people being abducted to see what's going on. But when those webcams are there, either they don't work or nothing is seen. Never seems to happen. We can't capture a physical event ever.
Well,
the darkness is in the soul, and that it's a psychological issue that makes perfect sense and doesn't in any way detract from the importance of the mystery.
Well, we have the Sherman Ranch case, the Skinwalker Ranch case, where they had one camera looking at another camera, they had an event triggering some of their gear when they went out to, and then one of the cameras went down, and they went out to check out that camera. All the wires had been ripped out. Yet when they looked at the image of the other camera that was filming that camera, there was no indication anything happened. So, and these are world-class scientists now doing this work. It's not just some, a webcam in a person's bedroom.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm suggesting is that physicality it doesn't necessarily it's not predicated on actual visual evidence. Sometimes things can occur in the blink of an eye, possibly, or things can occur with some sort of screen image that blocks the actual event itself.
I'm going to ask another question, too, since we're talking about physical effects. What about the so-called electromagnetic effect, David, where someone in a car sees a UFO and suddenly, and this, of course, is the classic image from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where the car stops working when the UFO is in the vicinity. As soon as it leaves, the car powers up, everything's normal. How do we explain that?
Well, I guess, the standard skeptical explanation, isn't it, is that the witness is nervous, fumbles, that the engine dies the way sometimes my engine dies when I get nervous in traffic. And then once the experience is over, the witness's serenity returns. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily will work, but at least that's the one that I've heard.
It's like Lyle Watson's book, The Secret Life of Inanimate Objects, where cars start up by themselves and drive around being chased by cops and make corners and speed up and slow down. I'm not sure if that works as a blanket explanation for, I'm sure it does for some cases, but we have too many cases where trained observers have had this happen, military people, for instance, obviously law enforcement, scientists, an air traffic controller I talked to had a similar thing happen. He swore he never touched the ignition. All he did was slow down, take his foot off the gas, and look, and boom, the car died. And then as soon as the thing left, he hadn't moved except his head. Boom, the car started up on its own. So maybe the human mind has the ability to manifest electrical effects like this, but I haven't seen any empirical evidence that would support that.
Yeah. Here's another kind of effect. It's called a commercial. David Halperin's our guest. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You can download a version that is mostly full-featured. Try it out, and if you like it, it's just $34.95 for Graphic Converter from lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKESOFT.com. lemkesoft.com for my favorite Graphic Converter.
Skip the long lines and high prices at the florist, because right now at proflowers.com, you can get 24 assorted roses with a free glass vase and a free box of chocolates for just $29.99. Just visit proflowers.com. Look for the radio microphone in the upper right corner and enter the secret code 4444. Unlike overpriced flowers at the florist, which sit in the cooler for days, our flowers are sent fresh cut from the fields and are guaranteed to stay fresh and beautiful for at least 7 full days. Just visit proflowers.com today to get 24 assorted roses with a free glass vase and free chocolates for only $29.99. Order now and pick the delivery date you want. It's guaranteed. But hurry, because Valentine's Day is this Monday, and our special offer ends this Friday. The only way to get this amazing deal is to visit proflowers.com. Look for the radio microphone in the upper right corner and enter the secret code 4444.
Where have all the military surplus stores gone? Don't worry, you don't need one, because everything you need at military surplus is at mainmilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E military.com, one of the last surviving true military surplus stores in the country. Go online now to mainmilitary.com and discover a source for hard-to-find surplus items at true surplus prices. Surplus gun cleaning kits as low as $2.99. Complete chemical suits as low as $11.99. See our huge selection of gas masks, filters, and accessories. Finish at M10 gas masks are 3 for $30, and Swiss filters are 3 for $12. Searching for Strike Anywhere matches? MainMilitary.com has them, plus a whole new product line of survival and first aid kits and lots more. Get free shipping on orders over $50 only at MainMilitary.com. That's M-A-I-N-E military.com, or call 877-608-0179, 877-608-0179. MainMilitary.com, the main name in military supply.
Normal blood pressure, naturally. How would that make you feel?
I'm Don from New Mexico. January of 2000, I had a heart attack. Then my real health began going downhill, and I had high blood pressure, high blood sugar, poor vision, and I really wasn't sleeping well. I was a mess, pretty much.
Don reports dramatic improvements with Heart and Body Extract.
I started taking Heart and Body Extract, and from within a few days, I started sleeping a lot better. My blood pressure normalized, my blood sugar normalized, and my sleep really did improve.
Experience these benefits and more when your body gets what it needs with the assistance of Heart and Body Extract. Order at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305. That's hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305.
And folks, I did not expect this at all. By the 7th, 8th, and 9th day, I saw dramatic improvements from taking Heart and Body Extract.
Details at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305 for Heart and Body Extract.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
You're in the Paracast. You never know what's going to happen next.
And our co-host, by the way, is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberger in the Paracast. We return for the last two segments, our visit with David Halperin, author of Journal of a UFO Investigator, a novel about the teenage UFO years. Before we go on, David, in writing this book, I'm going to do this because I'm an egomaniac, because you have to be an egomaniac to go on the radio every week and do a show of any kind. So if I pick up this book and go through, and I've read a lot of it, fascinating novel, nearly 275, 300 pages. Do I find myself represented here or not?
You do not. You are not in the book, Gene.
Oh, no, he was really looking forward to being like, maybe even a composite of characters or something, but...
Yeah.
Okay, that's an important point here. If we look at this book, will we recognize personalities in the UFO field represented here?
No, you will not. Because I chose to write the book not about my actual experience as a teenage UFO investigator, but starting off from certain, there are two things that are autobiographical in it. One is the family background. The protagonist of the book, like me, spent his adolescence with a dying mother. Okay, and that background, which occurs certainly, it's evident at the beginning of the book, that is something I know from my own adolescence. The other thing that's autobiographical is a bit more complex, that I remember some of the fantasies, some of the dreams even. I think they were dreams, although conceivably they could have been waking fantasies that I had in those years. And in the book, I asked the question, what would happen if these fantasies were set in motion? For example, I remember I had a dream, though it might have been a waking fantasy. I think it was a dream that I was in this big rambling old house, I think somewhere out in the country, attending a meeting of a scientific society of very serious teenagers interested in exploring the realms beyond conventional science, one of whom was a beautiful blonde girl in an evening dress. And I took that scene, and what if the narrator of the journal really was at a meeting of such a society? And what if there was a beautiful blonde, as she turns out to be seductress and thief at the meeting? And what if she and Danny take a shine to each other? What if? And that's where the story goes. So that the real-life UFO investigators, I don't think, appear in it at all.
Gene, are you disappointed? He was convinced that he just had to have been in there somewhere, but maybe subconsciously he's in there.
I would be the villain.
And you've manifested him subconsciously in your writing. By the way,
the UFO
David,
investigator in this book, David, tell our listeners, does he really encounter any extraordinary events, or is it mostly about the people, not so much about the science fiction?
It's about the people. I mean, the book is essentially a coming-of-age story.
With one of the coolest covers I have ever seen on a book. I love the dust jacket cover. It's so striking. Did the publisher do that? You had a hand in that?
No, I had no hand at all. They presented it to me and told me this was my cover, whether I liked it or not.
They did a good one for you. It's excellent.
Yep.
As publishers do. And sometimes they do an awfully good job. This is an incredible cover, incredibly distinctive. It's also a hardcover book, by the way. Listen to that, breaking open on a hardcover book. We don't see
with the word UFO on the cover. I love it.
Is there going to be like an Amazon Kindle version or an iBook version?
Well, there's already going to be an audio version. I don't know if it's available yet.
Who did the audio? You?
No. A person. I've seen the name, but it rings no bells for me. The audio is available from Blackstone, or will be available from Blackstone. And I think I may have mentioned that the book has been published in Spain under the title Diario de un Investigador de OVNIs, and it will be published also in Italian and German versions.
What about the movie rights?
Not yet sold.
We have to think who's going to play our protagonist, who's going to play young David Halperin. So what age group is this coming of age? Is this something like the mid-teens or so?
Yeah. I mean, that's what the story begins with the protagonist turning 13, and it ends when he's 17.
Yeah.
And it's essentially about him and the story that he needs to tell himself in order to cope with his real life.
The book, of course, is Journal of a UFO Investigator by David Halperin, and it's a lot different than what you might expect, because this is the kind of story where even if UFOs aren't part of the picture, it would be a fascinating story.
Well, I'm sure it looks at motivations, and it looks at the development of critical thinking, I would imagine. I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, although I do plan on it. Of course, I'm traveling now, so it's been a little rough for me to do much besides work. But I can't wait to dive into it, especially now that I've been introduced to David and talked to him, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think that this is a really interesting literary project in that so many people in this field are looking at the nuts and bolts and the theories and they're bantering back and forth different hypotheses, and people tend to forget that it's real people that are out there developing themselves as they go about learning about themselves in life and how to investigate the mysterious and how to look at the things that they can't explain in their life. And I think this is a brilliant idea, and I can't wait to dive into it and really, really embrace it as a look at the motivations, if nothing else, of kids that are involved in this, especially back in the golden years, the glory years of this field.
Yes.
Now, one of the questions I'm going to ask, and I think this is where we frame it, we had this teen UFO movement in the 50s and 60s and maybe to some part in the 70s. We don't see that happening in the 21st century. Is there maybe because teens are so much different today, or because UFOs don't hold that fascination anymore?
I don't think it's the latter. My sense is that UFOs have an enduring fascination. I mean, I remember it was actually when I was doing an email interview on UFOs several months ago that when I was waiting for my correspondent to send me her question, I looked at CNN.com, and the top news story was a fireball seen in the sky somewhere over Kansas, which was being viewed by something like twice as many people as were viewing the second top story, which was one of Tiger Woods' mistresses getting arrested for drunk driving.
And usually that's really the top story.
Yes, yes. And consistently, it seems to me, when there is a UFO story, on CNN.com, that is the one that people gravitate to. And I don't know if you all have seen that movie, The Fourth Kind, but when it came out at the end of 2009, it was one of the top grossing movies in this country, and then it fell off very quickly after the reviews started panning it, and I myself thought it was a very poor movie. But the theme of it, which is UFO abductions, is something that appeals deeply to people. So I don't think that UFOs have lost one bit of their power. Now, whether they still have the function for adolescents in difficult situations, such as I was in, that they did then, I don't know. I mean, I was intrigued when I heard Jerry Clark say that in your interview, that there don't seem to be that there doesn't seem to be a teen UFO scene anymore, and I don't have. I can offer nothing more than the wildest guesses why not.
We have David Halperin. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Hey neighbors, Nuance offers Dragon speech recognition for a variety of platforms. Dragon Dictate for Mac, Dragon Naturally Speaking 11 for Windows, and Dragon mobile apps for BlackBerry, iPhone, and iPad. No matter how you compute, Dragon instantly converts what you say into text, helping you be more productive just by talking. Find out more at getdragon.com. That's getdragon.com. Getdragon.com.
You expect professional service from your doctor, your accountant, and even the girl who takes your morning coffee order. Why not from your domain registrar, too? Namecheap.com provides stellar service with no sneaky upselling. We offer more features and security options for your website than there are ways to order a latte. And new domains come with a WhoIsGuard to protect your personal info. At Namecheap.com, you can get your domain for as low as $2.99. Now is a great time to get to know Namecheap.com.
Becoming a modern smoker is now easier and more cost-effective, thanks to LeSig. Traditional smokers the world over love LeSig. E-cigarettes with a look, feel, and taste of real cigarettes, but without the nasty smoke, ashes, or stains. LeSig is powered by revolutionary microelectronic technology. A small rechargeable battery and unique replaceable cartridge provide all the satisfaction and benefits of smoking without the smoke and all the hazards. See the large variety of LeSig e-cigarette supplies and accessories at LeSig.com. That's LECIG.com. LeSig is competitively priced, comes with the best customer service, a 30-day warranty, and satisfaction guaranteed. What a great gift idea. For a 10% discount, mention GCN when you call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Ask for fast, free, same-day shipping. Order online at LeSig.com and use promo code GCN at checkout. That's LECIG.com. LeSig, for today's modern smoker.
At hempusa.org, we offer chemical-free products to people around the world, detoxifying, self-healing while rebuilding the immune system. We urge our listeners to please consider our largest-selling product, microplant powder. Our microplant powder is rich in silica and probiotics to help rebuild the immune system and to create a healthy stomach flora. Microplant powder is excellent for daily intake and is perfect to add to your storage shelter. We urge our listeners to please visit us at hempusa.org. And remember, all of our products are chemical-free and healthy to eat. We constantly strive to give you the best service, highest quality, and rapid shipping anywhere. And we offer free shipping on orders over $95 in the U.S. Please visit us at hempusa.org or call 908-691-2608. That's 908-691-2608. See what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you at hempusa.org.
They all laughed when I told them my body cleansing tonic was tea. But after 10 days, my body feels way more energized, and I've lost nearly 15 pounds. They're not laughing now.
That's what John from Oklahoma said about Life Change Tea.
In the 6 months of being on the tea, all my digestive problems have cleared up. My energy levels have gone way up, and my constipation problems are no more.
And that's what Michelle from California said about Life Change Tea from GetTheTea.com. The amazing all-natural tea that cleanses your body from toxins, chemicals, bacteria, viruses, and molds, while helping to lower high blood pressure, high cholesterol, lower blood sugar levels, and help you lose weight. Life Change Tea has no caffeine and is all natural, all organic. Go to GetTheTea.com today or call 928-308-0408. That's GetTheTea.com or call 928-308-0408.
Life Change Tea really changes things.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
This is Jim Mosley, editor of Saucer Smear, and I'm here to say a good word or two about the Paracast, which I believe is the gold standard of paranormal radio. Listen to it if you can.
Thank you, Jim Mosley. Glad to have you aboard as a listener. A reminder, if you have a comment or a question about the Paracast, the things you hear, the things you'd like to hear, please write us directly. news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. I promise we read every email message we get. Now, David Halpern's joining us for the final session. The book is called Journal of a UFO Investigator, a novel, kind of a coming-of-age novel. I look forward to having this sold, maybe as a TV movie would be the most appropriate, I wonder. But we'll have to see. He'll take anything. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. You're in the Paracast. And as we look towards the UFO field in general, there has been ongoing movements of one type or another for some sort of disclosure, dating back from the 50s. With Major Donald Kehoe. Today, various forms of requests for disclosure. The government knows something about UFOs. They must reveal it. But the UFO that you talk about, the government wouldn't even care about, would they?
I doubt it. I'm not sure how much they cared about UFOs, if any.
Good answer.
So the people who are hoping for disclosure, they're whistling in the dark?
That would be my guess. I mean, as E.J. Ruppelt ended his classic book, Only Time Will Tell. But, I mean, wasn't there some talk a few weeks ago that WikiLeaks was going to produce something about UFOs, and it turned out to be just a joke? That at most somebody used UFOs as a kind of metaphor? I seriously doubt that anything's going to turn up.
Yep, I agree with you there.
I could always predict, I think, having followed this for so many years, that even if UFOs are ET, nothing will be disclosed.
Yeah.
Okay, but then that brings back the other question, too, about possible government interactions. You can say then that when people remember something happening near Roswell, New Mexico, it wasn't the crash of a UFO.
I mean, I found Carl Flock's book tremendously persuasive, that it was a top-secret espionage project, so naturally there was a cover-up.
In a situation like that, to be fair about it also, and I'm not taking a side here, if you have this top-secret craft, the average military person wouldn't know. There'd be no need to know. They wouldn't have to know this. So they could see this happening, and maybe they say it's a flying saucer. And then the management comes down, the leadership, the commanders say, oh, no, this is a top-secret thing, has nothing to do with that, you got to retract the story, which is, of course, where the mystery starts. Then they say, oh, it was a balloon.
Yeah. Or I mean, if a Flock is right, and I find them very persuasive, it was a balloon, but part of not just an ordinary weather balloon. It was part of a balloon train used for taking radio equipment up to the edge of the stratosphere. I mean, it's an interesting question if you think about it. Like you remember the UFO that Thomas Mantell chased. Was that really a UFO? And if it was a skyhook balloon, which I think is the conventional explanation of it, in a sense it was a UFO because hardly anybody knew those things existed.
It was basically an unfortunate accident.
Yeah, but I mean that the object being chased was something that in fact was unidentified in terms of the knowledge that most people had.
So when we hear stories then, and in our previous week's episode we had George Filer, Eastern UFO representative for MUFON. He's the Eastern investigator. He's got a publication called Filer's Files where he collects UFO tales from around the world. Mm-hmm. And he talked of cases where he saw a UFO as a navigator for the Air Force, mm-hmm. and that it was tracked on radar. So the question, of course, we ask, what did George Filer see?
Uh-huh.
Because that doesn't fit into the imagination, does it?
I don't think so, but I just don't know.
And, of course, he also talked about instances where they tried to shoot at the UFO and something may or may not have fired back.
Or at least they didn't end up coming back to their base.
That is to say that some other airplane went after the UFO, they tried shooting at it, and somehow the plane disappeared.
Exactly.
Correct. It crashed somehow. Or like, of course, the famous Philip Mantell? Thomas Mantell, who, I guess the official explanation now is that he was chasing Venus.
No, I think that was the first one. I don't think that ever made sense. I don't think Venus is ever visible in daylight. But I think the standard explanation was that it was a balloon it was called a skyhook balloon. I don't know, to tell you the truth, I don't know exactly what it did, but like so many projects in the immediate post-war era, it was kept tightly under wraps. So hardly anybody knew that these giant balloons existed. So naturally somebody would say, ooh, there's a weird thing in the sky. Let me go up and take a look. That, since nobody knew that these, or hardly anybody knew that these skyhook balloons existed,